It has been another big week at Westminster, with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, facing his first major test, several of them in the Commons.
That's right, but the Brexit deadlock remains. The government has lost its majority, and yesterday the opposition parties got together to block the general election that Mr Johnson wants. So what on earth happens next? Joining us now is the co-leader of the Green Party, Sian Berry. Morning to you.
Good morning.
You said that the Greens will vote against a general election on Monday. Why is that?
Well, I think we've seen something really extraordinary here. We've seen politicians who normally disagree on so much coming together in the national interest, having mature discussions together in Parliament. And we've seen MPs and leaders from all the different opposition parties coming out and speaking with one voice on this. And they're absolutely united that there should be no general election until we've made sure that the threat of a no-deal Brexit is absolutely eliminated. That is incredibly important. And everyone's sat down, and we've not responded to the goads of the Prime Minister to try and call a general election now, because we know that there is too much risk attached to that. We cannot risk a no-deal Brexit, and that's what MPs have come together to call for. And it's just very important. I've never seen anything like it. I think the Prime Minister is very rattled by this. He's faced by one of the most powerful things that can be, which is a group of unlikely allies getting together for the common good.
You're talking about the Prime Minister being rattled. The Conservatives would say that actually Jeremy Corbyn is rattled at the moment. He has fairly notoriously been called a chicken for, as they say, chickening out of his opportunity to go for the general election. Is there a sense that there is a fear around a general election when it comes to the parties who are in opposition?
The parties do recognise the risk attached to a general election, and I think the attempts by the Conservatives, which have been incredibly childish in places, to try and goad Jeremy Corbyn as the leader of the opposition into calling another vote of no confidence, have been bolstered by the fact that in those rooms where the opposition parties have been talking, there is a range of voices. And I think this really shows something in politics, that when you have a range of voices talking, of differing views maybe, people can come together around the common good by having those discussions together. I think the other opposition leaders have bolstered Jeremy Corbyn's resolve, so he hasn't responded to the taunts of the Conservatives.
So how far is this support, this band of friends going to go? We've seen already that the Brexit party saying that they won't stand against Tories. Are the Greens likely to consider offering the same thing for Remain candidates?
In the case of a general election, we also have to make sure that we get a parliament that represents the majority in the country that there is at the moment for remaining in the EU. Now, our election system doesn't make that easy, and I think the other parties are all now thinking how we can target our resources more sensibly towards the Conservatives,
so
and make sure that we get that representative parliament.
So are you saying yes?
I'm saying that we're thinking very hard about whether we focus our fire on each other or on the Conservatives in this election. And I think they do need to be very worried about that.
So you would offer candidates or you wouldn't?
We're going to be standing in as many seats as we possibly can as Greens, making the case for our very clear message of no to Brexit, but also no to climate chaos. But when it comes to Conservative seats, we are talking to other parties about how best we might win those working together. And this is something that I think Boris Johnson is seeing in Parliament. And if we can take that kind of unity into a general election, just in terms of where we put our resources, that would be a good thing.
So the coalition at the moment all looks very friendly and very cosy. But the fact is that you are now forging alliances with parties that you actually don't share views on policy with.
Yeah, no, and that's, again, this is the mature kind of politics that you see in other countries where we have proportional representation. People who disagree on things, but arguing for them in a mature way, and we'll be doing that in the general election too. We disagree on many things like austerity, on the urgency of dealing with climate change, the need to absolutely transform our economy in the face of that other existential threat to the country and the world. We'll be putting forward a very clear message to vote Green in the general election, but I think it's really important that we also work together to stop a no-deal Brexit, to stop Parliament being represented by the Brexit Party and what's left of the Conservatives.
The Green Party has in the past campaigned for another referendum. Does this mean that you don't respect the outcome of the first one?
I think the first referendum that was now 3.25 years ago does need to be ratified again. We've called for any final deal to be put to the people, and we're still calling for that. The most democratic thing that could happen right now is the people's vote that the Greens have been calling for from the start.
Where does this all end, though?
I hope it ends in us remaining in the European Union and learning some lessons about this for our democracy. The fact that our constitution cannot cope when somebody as untrustworthy as the current Prime Minister is in power means that we do need a written constitution. We should have that citizens' convention to put together a new constitution where every vote counts, where we've got democratic institutions at the right level throughout the country. That really needs to be done, and I think this does show the need for that, and it gives us the opportunity, once we've decided to remain in the EU, of rethinking things on the domestic front as well.
The one thing I do have to say at this point, to start talking about changes to the way that we vote, do you not think that the ordinary person, the ordinary British person, has just had enough of all of this, and the thought of now talking about changes to the way we even run this country, everyone's just fatigued?
I think that's actually quite true. But look at the European elections that we just had. That was an election held under proportional representation. There was enormous enthusiasm for voting in that election because people knew that their votes would count. And look at how well we did as the Greens. Look at how other opposition parties did well in those elections as well. We, the Greens, beat the Conservatives in that election. And I think by working together with other parties, we can beat the Conservatives in any general election as well.
Sian Berry, thank you very much.